Imagine a life you've built with your own hands. Every detail, every sacrifice, every hope invested in your family's future. Now imagine it all starting to collapse in a single evening. A chance glance at your son's phone reveals messages that hit like a bombshell, exposing secrets you never knew existed. Your marriage, your career, your relationship with your child. What will remain when the skeletons come tumbling out of the closet? Ahead lies a battle for the very foundation of your life. But can you hold on to yourself and your world when the closest people betray you? My dear friend, be sure to subscribe to my channel if this is your first time here. And give your royal like to this video. Marcus Wilson stood in the warm glow of the late September sun, which poured through the kitchen window, its light stretching shadows across the room. As he scrubbed at the stubborn traces of concrete clinging to his hands, the coarse texture of his palms told the story of nearly 3 decades in construction, a career built on skill, grit, and a refusal to compromise. He stole a glance at the clock on the wall, 4:15 p.m. With his son Charles at soccer practice until 7, Marcus had a few quiet hours to tackle estimates for the Thompson project. The sudden buzz of Charles's phone shattered the quiet. Left abandoned in the usual rush to practice, the device vibrated insistently on the granite countertop. Marcus initially ignored it, focused on his own thoughts, but the previews flashing on the screen caught his eye. The snippets of text seemed to wrap around his chest, squeezing tighter with every word. "Dad doesn't even—" One message started. Another read, "Anthony said we could—" Curiosity mixed with unease as Marcus picked up the phone. His calloused hands, so adept at handling raw materials, now trembled slightly as he began to scroll. Each message from Charles's conversation with his friend Kevin landed like a sledgehammer. "No, Dad's clueless about Mom's new lover," Charles had written. Another message followed, blithely recounting, "Anthony drives that new BMW M5, the one we saw at the dealership. He lets me drive it after school. Way cooler than Dad's old truck. Says I've got a knack for it." Kevin had replied, "Wait, he's your mom's boss? That's insane. Your dad seriously has no idea?" Charles's response came without hesitation. "Nah, he's too busy obsessing over his construction stuff." Each new revelation stripped away another layer of Marcus's composure. "Mom says he wouldn't notice if she danced naked in front of him with sparklers," Charles had written. "Anthony brings me lunch on Wednesdays and Fridays. He got us courtside Lakers tickets for next weekend. Dad thinks I'm at SAT prep with Kevin." The texts continued, each one an unguarded window into a life Marcus hadn't realized was unraveling around him. "Anthony's teaching me to golf next weekend," one read. "Says it's critical for networking. Dad just goes on about calluses and hard work. Such a boomer." The final text hit Marcus harder than all the others combined. "Honestly, I like Anthony better as a dad. At least he listens when I talk about college. Dad's stuck in the past. Connections matter more than sweating for it. Welcome to 2024, old man." A low hum in the distance signaled the garage door opening. Rebecca wasn't supposed to be home. Startled, Marcus quickly set the phone back where it had been, his mind racing. Moments later, the kitchen door opened, and Rebecca stepped inside. She carried herself with the poise of someone who always appeared in control. Her designer handbag draped effortlessly over her arm, her tailored blazer and skirt perfect, polished and entirely out of place in the modest kitchen. "Oh, Marcus, you're home early," she said, a faint smile tugging at her lips. Her tone carried a lightness that didn't match the tension in her posture. He met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "Wrapped up the Beverly Hills project ahead of schedule. Good crew, reliable men." His voice carried an edge as he let the word reliable linger. Rebecca's hand fidgeted with her car keys, an unusual display of nervousness. "That's great. I just stopped by to grab some paperwork. The dealership's crazy right now. End of quarter push." "Must be," Marcus replied evenly, taking a step forward. His tall, solid frame seemed to fill the room. Selling a lot of M5S? Her face stiffened. What? BMWs, he said, his gaze unwavering. Charles seems to know a lot about them lately. Rebecca paled, clutching her handbag tighter. Oh, teenagers and cars, you know how it is, she said, her voice unsteady. I really should get back. Anthony, Mr. Rodriguez, needs these contracts. Her words hung in the air, and Marcus didn't respond, his silence pressing down on the room. Rebecca's unease deepened as she edged toward the door, but Marcus didn't stop her. He simply watched her leave, his mind already turning to the confrontation he knew could no longer be avoided. Marcus mulled over the name Anthony, letting each syllable churn in his mind like bitter wine. The new sales manager, the man teaching his son to drive, perfecting his golf swing, and flaunting courtside Lakers tickets. Rebecca's usual composure cracked as she blurted, "Have you been spying on me?" "Spying?" Marcus let out a humorless laugh. "No need. Charles left his phone at home." He stepped closer, his voice sharp and biting. "Our son seems pretty taken with his mentor." "Tell me, Rebecca, does Anthony know you're draining the college fund I busted my back to save for your little midlife experiment?" Rebecca's voice trembled as she protested. "It's not like that. You think I'm blind?" Marcus's words cut through her feeble defense. "I'm out there breaking my body on job sites, building a future for this family, while you're cozying up with some guy who peddles cars?" Rebecca's chin lifted, defiance flashing in her eyes. "Anthony's not just a car salesman, he's a finance manager now. He has ambition, Marcus. He's even planning college visits with Charles next month." "With my money," Marcus shot back, his voice cold and unforgiving. "Every dollar you've lavished on your boyfriend came from me. Late-night drywall shifts, weekend tile jobs, building houses for other people while you complained about my hours." "You don't understand," Rebecca snapped, her frustration boiling over. "This is what success looks like now. Charles needs connections, opportunities." "What Charles needs," Marcus said, his voice heavy with restrained anger, "is to know the difference between men who build something real and men who sell empty promises." He took a deliberate step back, his gaze piercing. "But I guess we're all about to learn that lesson." Rebecca faltered, uncertainty flickering across her face. "What's that supposed to mean?" Marcus's smirk was icy. "Anthony's waiting. Don't keep him." He turned away, his voice dripping with finality. "And Rebecca, hope that blazer's warm enough. Winter's coming." The weight of his words hung in the air as Rebecca's heels echoed across the garage floor. She climbed into her car, her movements hurried, and disappeared down the street. Marcus waited until her taillights vanished before pulling out his phone. His hands were steady as he dialed. "Wyatt, it's Marcus Wilson. Remember the contingency plan? Activate it. Every account. Leave nothing untouched." Wyatt Davis's office was the epitome of understated elegance, worlds apart from the dusty construction sites Marcus knew well. The smell of leather and polished wood filled the space as Wyatt scrolled through files on his dual monitors. Marcus sat across the desk, his work boots dusty, his jeans streaked with dirt, his jaw set in grim determination. Wyatt leaned forward, swiveling a screen toward Marcus. "The financial trail is clear," he began. "Rebecca's been regularly dipping into your joint accounts. 2 to 3 times a week, business lunches at Mastro's Steakhouse, averaging $200 a pop." He tapped a few keys, bringing up more data. "It started about 3 months ago. Coincidentally, that's when Anthony Rodriguez joined Luxury Motors as a sales manager." Marcus's expression darkened. "Show me Charles's expenses." Wyatt pulled up another file. "Here's the private school account. Lunch costs have doubled. 2 meals charged most days. High-end restaurant deliveries straight to the school." Adjusting his glasses, Wyatt glanced at Marcus. "And there's more. Concert tickets, sporting events, even golf club dues, all charged to their shared credit cards. Though the college fund was left intact for now, she'd been researching ways to withdraw from it early. Lock it all down. Marcus ordered decisively. Transfer everything into the new accounts we set up. I want this wrapped up before the banks close today. Wyatt nodded briskly, his fingers flying over the keyboard. The business accounts are secure. She's never had access to those. Good call keeping Wilson Construction separate. He adjusted his glasses, meeting Marcus's eyes. But you should know, Wyatt continued. She tried to get into them last week. Claimed to be your assistant on a call, fishing for details about your contracts and payment schedules. Marcus's jaw tightened. Was it about the Thompson project? He asked sharply. Exactly. She was after the payment details for that. That's a $3 million contract, Wyatt confirmed. Marcus began pacing, his frustration building. This isn't just an affair. They're plotting something. Wyatt swiveled back to his screen. There's more. I dug into Anthony Rodriguez. His history is sketchy. 3 dealerships in 5 years, and every exit tied to some kind of scandal involving married clients. 2 harassment claims, both settled quietly, and his BMW, leased under the dealership's name. The guys all show no substance. Marcus's expression darkened. It's time to end this charade. Pulling out his phone, he scrolled until he found the number he needed. You know Aria Brown, the divorce lawyer who made headlines last year? She took her client's cheating husband to the cleaners, even got his yacht. Wyatt smirked knowingly. Need her info? I've got it. Built her a custom garage last spring. Marcus paused at the door. Wyatt, one more thing. Gather every receipt and bank statement from the last 20 years. I need a full record of how I built this life. Wyatt tapped a thumb drive on his desk. Already done. Everything's on here. Digital copies organized. The recent spending spree your wife's been on compared to your deposit history. It paints a crystal clear story. You working 16-hour days, weekends, the whole 9 yards. A judge won't miss it. Marcus pocketed the drive. Send all of it to Aria. And Wyatt? Thanks for sticking with me. You've always had my back. Wyatt nodded, his tone steady. You've run your business clean, Marcus. Paid your taxes, done it all above board. That's a lot more than I can say for Rodriguez. He turned back to his computer. Oh, and his credit report? It's a disaster. The guy's drowning in debt. I'd bet anything the dealership doesn't know about his gambling habit. As Marcus headed for his truck, he dialed Aria Brown's office. Her secretary answered almost immediately. Mr. Wilson? Miss Brown can see you at 4. The law firm occupied the top floor of a high-rise Marcus's company had renovated years ago. Aria greeted him with a firm handshake, her tailored suit radiating authority, a striking contrast to Rebecca's love of flashy attire. Wyatt sent me the files, she said, leading him into a polished conference room with sweeping views of the city skyline. I've already reviewed them. I must say, Mr. Wilson, you've provided me with a wealth of material to work with, Aria began confidently. Call me Marcus, he interrupted, settling into the chair with a soft thump, his boots brushing against the plush carpet beneath. So, where do we go from here? Without hesitation, Aria spread a stack of documents across the table before them. You've already taken some critical steps, securing assets, gathering evidence, and shielding your business, she noted, tapping her pen thoughtfully against a legal pad. But timing is crucial. Your wife's recent spending spree, it's escalating, a clear sign she's becoming more impulsive. And those questions she's been asking about the business accounts? She could be setting the stage for something more significant. And the college fund? Marcus asked, a hint of worry seeping into his voice. It's untouched for now, Aria reassured him. Luckily, the records clearly indicate it was funded entirely through your legitimate construction work. But her behavior? It demonstrates a troubling trend of financial irresponsibility. She slid a highlighted document across the table. We need to act swiftly. The moment she realizes those accounts are locked down, she'll likely consult an attorney. I want this handled properly, Marcus said firmly. By the book. I built everything I have with these hands, and I'm not about to let it crumble now. Then this is our approach, Aria explained, her tone precise, like detailing a set of blueprints. We file immediately, citing abandonment and infidelity. Your evidence is rock solid. She pointed to a text from Marcus's son displayed in one of the documents. This will carry weight in court. Judges don't look kindly on parental alienation. Marcus absorbed her strategy, asking detailed questions about custody, asset division, and the overall process. When their discussion finally concluded, Arya posed a final question. That house you mentioned? You built it yourself? Every last bit of it, Marcus replied. Weekends and evenings over 5 years, all while holding down a full-time job. Good, Arya said, making a note. That's sweat equity. It'll be a key argument in court. She closed her folder and met his gaze. Go home, Marcus. Keep things normal for now. We'll prepare the groundwork, and when the moment comes, we'll act decisively. Driving home, Marcus's mind wandered. The sinking sun cast long, stretched shadows across the streets, bringing back memories of that morning's kitchen argument, a moment that already felt like a distant past. When he pulled into a hardware store parking lot, his decision was made. 20 minutes later, he emerged carrying a brand new toolbox, an exact replica of the one he had used to teach his son Charles the basics of carpentry. Tonight, the original would come with him, but its twin would stay behind, a quiet symbol of legacy and hard choices. Some lessons, Marcus believed, needed time to sink in. As dusk settled over the driveway, Marcus worked steadily, loading his truck with the essentials. The duplicate toolbox sat prominently in the garage, placed where the original had stood for nearly 20 years. He chose his belongings carefully: important paperwork, family photographs from the time before Rebecca's betrayal, and his father's weathered journals on carpentry. The shrill ring of the house phone interrupted his focus. He picked it up to hear Scarlett, Rebecca's mother, on the other end. Marcus, dear, is Rebecca there? She's not answering her cell phone. She's still at work, he replied evenly. It's the end of quarter crunch at the dealership. Oh, Scarlett hesitated. She mentioned a new manager, Anthony, I think. Said he's been shaking things up with innovative sales strategies. Marcus's hand tightened on the receiver. Did she happen to bring up the Lakers tickets? Or just the business dinners? Marcus. Scarlett's voice faltered before returning with a more subdued tone. Oh no, don't tell me. Ask her yourself, Marcus interrupted, his tone steely. I'm sure she'll have a story ready for you. After a brief silence, his voice softened. You've always been good to me, Scarlett. A better mother-in-law than I probably deserved. Where is Charles in all of this? Charles was wrestling with the harsh weight of decisions and their fallout. Meanwhile, Marcus glanced at his watch, his expression unreadable. Time to leave, he thought. Take care, Scarlett. And you too, son, he said, ending the call. As the call disconnected, Marcus reminded himself, not everyone has her back in this. He turned his attention to his home office, settling in front of the computer for one last review. On the screen, a live feed from a hidden camera in the garage showed Rebecca's nightly rituals. Like clockwork, she arrived a little after 11 p.m., checked her car's odometer, and adjusted her clothing using the side mirror. Routine acts, insignificant to some, yet every detail was logged and time-stamped. A text notification pulled Marcus's gaze to his phone. It was from Charles. Dad, can I have $50 for a team dinner after practice? Marcus typed a quick reply. Check your lunch account balance. The familiar dots indicating Charles was typing appeared, disappeared, and then returned. It says insufficient funds. That's gotta be a mistake. No mistake, Marcus replied. Ask Anthony for lunch money tomorrow. He's usually generous, right? There was no response. Marcus forwarded the exchange to Arya, filing it away in his growing archive of evidence. Next, he picked up the phone and dialed Westbrook Academy, Charles's private school. Mr. Anderson, this is Marcus Wilson. I'm calling about Charles's tuition. The administrator, polite but reserved, pulled up the relevant records. Yes, Mr. Wilson. The next payment is due next week. Will you be using the same account as before? No, Marcus said firmly. "Effective immediately, I'm withdrawing my financial responsibility for Charles's education." His tone was steady, unwavering. A pause hung in the air. "I see," the administrator finally said, sounding cautious. "That's highly unusual, Mr. Wilson. Charles is nearly finished with his senior year. His mother has been actively involved in his college planning. I take it she has an alternative plan in place." "I imagine she does," Marcus replied coolly, his words deliberate. "And one more thing. The recent charges for Lakers tickets and a golf club membership, those were unauthorized and processed using my wife's credentials through the parent association account." There was a flurry of keystrokes on the other end of the line. "Those charges were approved by someone named Rodriguez," the administrator explained, citing benefits for senior students as the justification. "How convenient," Marcus said, his voice sharpened by frustration. "Over the years, I've funded 3 major additions to Westbrook Academy, yet I've never blurred the line between business and personal matters. I suggest your fraud department takes a closer look." The administrator cleared his throat awkwardly. "We'll launch an investigation right away. And Mr. Wilson, I'm sorry for the difficult circumstances. Charles is a strong student, though I have to admit there have been some noticeable changes in his behavior recently." Marcus's voice hardened. "Noticeable changes? That's a diplomatic choice of words." "Well," the administrator hesitated, "staff have raised concerns over his new wardrobe and frequent lunch deliveries. It's caused some friction among his peers." After the call ended, Marcus took a final walk through the house. In the kitchen, he placed the divorce papers in an undeniably prominent spot. Alongside them, he laid out printed screenshots of Charles's text messages and Rebecca's financial records. At the very top of the pile sat his wedding band, a plain gold circle, understated compared to Rebecca's flashy diamond replacement. Glancing at his phone, Marcus noticed the live security feed showing Charles's soccer practice winding down. Rebecca's car was still parked at the dealership, her routine Wednesday meeting playing out with its usual precision. Picking up his father's old toolbox, Marcus headed toward the garage. He paused for a moment at his workbench, his eyes drawn to a faded photograph pinned to the corkboard. In the picture, a beaming 10-year-old Charles clutched his first hammer, proudly standing beside a partially constructed treehouse. Marcus lingered, his gaze fixed on the memory. Then, without another glance back, he walked out. Marcus carefully removed the pin from the corkboard, his movements deliberate as he tucked it into his wallet. The vacant space left behind seemed to radiate disapproval, a stark reminder of its absence. His phone vibrated yet again, a notification from Wyatt, confirming the final transfers were complete. Nearly 3 decades, 27 years of tireless work, steadfast contracts, and relentless effort now rested in untouched accounts. Rebecca's unchecked spending was about to collide with a wall that couldn't be scaled. There was nothing left to draw from. As dusk settled, Marcus slid into his truck, pausing to take in the house before him. It wasn't just a structure, it was the embodiment of his life's labor. Every beam, every angle, every pane of glass bore his personal touch. In the dim light, it seemed no different from the other lavish homes dotting the neighborhood, but Marcus understood its soul, its hidden strength, its silent confessions. "Your move," he murmured under his breath, twisting the key in the ignition. The truck moved forward with quiet determination, leaving behind a home laden with invisible warnings and naked truths. In the garage, a pristine toolbox stood, a mute herald of the difference between building something real and merely playing at ownership. The red glow of the taillights faded into the night as Marcus headed north toward a small town, where a community center awaited his skill and a fresh chapter beckoned. On the passenger seat, his phone flickered and buzzed relentlessly. Rebecca, Charles, the credit card company. The calls went unanswered, their urgency dissolving into the enveloping darkness like whispers lost in an endless void. Some silences, Marcus reflected, speak volumes where words cannot. Rebecca's morning began in her usual self-assured manner. She eased her luxury SUV into the Starbucks drive-thru, her designer sunglasses poised atop impeccably coiffed hair. With the effortless precision of habit, she ordered her usual, a sugar-free vanilla latte with almond milk, extra hot, light foam. "That'll be $7, Mrs. Wilson," chirped the barista. Rebecca handed over her platinum card, her manicured nails gleaming under the sunlight. Routine. But the barista hesitated, frowning after the first attempt. "I'm sorry, ma'am. It's declined." Rebecca's voice tightened, her irritation evident. "That can't be right. Try it again." 3 more attempts yielded the same result. The honks of impatient drivers behind her grew louder. Rebecca, now flustered, rummaged through her Gucci wallet for another card, but each swipe failed. "This must be your system," she snapped, her polished exterior beginning to crack. The teenage barista shrugged apologetically. "The system's fine, ma'am. Other cards are working." With embarrassment burning her face, Rebecca pulled out of the line, her phone already in hand. Opening her banking app, she was greeted by a chilling notice. "Account access restricted. Contact your financial institution." Her hands trembled as she dialed Marcus. Voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. "Mrs. Wilson?" Her assistant's voice came through her car's speaker, startling her. "Charles's school is on line 1. They say it's urgent." Switching calls, Rebecca's pulse thundered in her ears. Charles's voice spilled through, laced with panic. "Mom, something's wrong," he stammered. "The school says my lunch account is empty. They're also asking about tuition." Rebecca forced a calm tone. "Don't worry, sweetheart, I'll—" "Mrs. Wilson," interrupted the school secretary, her voice brisk. "Please hold. The European trip coordinator needs to speak with you." Before Rebecca could respond, another voice interjected. "Mrs. Wilson, I'm calling about Charles's senior trip. The final payment was reversed. If we don't receive immediate funds, his spot will be forfeited." Rebecca gripped the steering wheel tighter, her knuckles white as panic clawed at her mind. "Wait, Mom, something's wrong." Charles's voice quivered on the phone, heavy with panic. "They're saying I can't go to class because tuition hasn't been paid. What's happening?" Rebecca's heart dropped. She yanked her BMW into a sudden U-turn, tires squealing against the asphalt. "I'm heading to the school now, sweetheart. Don't worry, I'll fix this." A drive that usually took 15 minutes was reduced to a harrowing 8. Bursting into the garage, her heels echoed sharply against the concrete as she called out, "Marcus!" Silence answered. She rushed to the master bedroom, where an unsettling sight froze her in place. The walk-in closet stood eerily barren on one side, Marcus's side. His work boots, his construction uniforms, all gone. The dresser drawers were half open and stripped clean. In the corner of the closet, the safe's door hung slightly ajar. Its once packed interior was now nearly empty, save for a thin stack of papers and what looked like printouts of phone screenshots. Rebecca's hands trembled as she reached for the top page. Her breath caught in her throat. Divorce papers, already filed. Beneath them lay printed text messages, annotated with unforgiving yellow highlights. Each incriminating exchange between Charles and Kevin was underscored. Discussions about Anthony, the secret drives in the BMW, and Charles's longing for a father figure other than Marcus. "No, this can't be real." Rebecca's voice cracked as she threw the papers aside and scrambled for her phone. "Anthony, pick up, please." Only voicemail greeted her desperation. She collapsed onto the bed, the same one she and Marcus had shared for 20 years. It was also the bed she'd frequently left for her clandestine inventory checks with Anthony. Her phone buzzed again, jolting her from her spiraling thoughts. This time it was the bank manager. "Mrs. Wilson," the voice began cautiously, "I need to discuss some irregular activity on your accounts." "What accounts?" she asked, her voice hollow, unrecognizable. The manager hesitated. "All joint accounts have been closed. The investment portfolio has been liquidated, and the credit cards, every one of them, are canceled. Each transaction carries Mr. Wilson's authorization. Rebecca's eyes darted to the blinking light of the garage security camera. Marcus had installed it last month, claiming it was for added safety after a spike in local thefts. That camera had seen it all: her late-night returns, her meticulous resetting of the odometer, her nervous glances in the rear-view mirror. In the garage, the betrayal deepened. The cherished antique toolbox, passed down from Marcus's father, was gone. In its place sat a pristine replica, untouched and gleaming, a stark symbol of everything Marcus had replaced and abandoned. Her phone erupted again, vibrating with calls from all sides: Charles, the school bursar, the trip organizer, the bank, each demanding answers she didn't have. Staring into the bedroom mirror, she barely recognized herself. Her flawless makeup and designer outfit no longer seemed polished, but rather a mask, a shallow disguise for a crumbling facade. A car engine rumbled in the driveway, snapping her back to reality. She rushed to the window, clinging to a fragile hope that it might be Marcus's truck. Instead, a sleek BMW M5 pulled in. Anthony stepped out, his face clouded with concern. "Rebecca!" he called out as he approached the door. "What's going on? The dealership just declined all our cards for something as small as lunch." Tears streaked her meticulously made-up face as she turned away from the window. Her carefully constructed world was collapsing piece by piece. In the garage, the new toolbox gleamed mockingly beneath the fluorescent light, and the ever-watchful camera continued its silent recording, Marcus's parting witness to her unraveling. Later that afternoon, Rebecca and Anthony sat tensely in the administrative office of Westbrook Academy. Across the stately mahogany desk, Headmaster Richards adjusted his glasses with a deliberate air. "Mrs. Wilson," he began, his tone heavy with polite regret, "Westbrook deeply values the relationship we've built with your family. Mr. Wilson's construction company has played an essential role in our campus expansions." He slid a document across the desk, its implications inescapable. "However, the tuition agreement is solely under Mr. Wilson's name. Without payment, we are unable to permit Charles to continue attending classes. Surely there's a middle ground we can agree on." Anthony leaned forward, his trademark smile, the one that had closed deals on luxury cars for years, lighting up his face. "I understand Marcus has his struggles, but Charles's education is too critical to risk over this." Richard's expression hardened. "Mr. Rodriguez, while your perspective is noted, you don't have any authority in this matter." He turned his attention to Rebecca. "Furthermore, the Parent Association has flagged questionable expenses. Courtside Lakers tickets, country club dues, these discrepancies are hard to ignore." Rebecca's voice trembled as she defended herself. "Those were investments in networking. They were meant to secure opportunities for Charles's future." Richard remained unswayed. "Speaking of Charles's future, his acceptance to Stanford depends on him finishing his senior year at Westbrook, without immediate payment." He let the pause carry its full weight. Anthony cleared his throat, preparing to interject. "Maybe I could—" "No," Richard interrupted curtly. "Policy is very clear. Only legal guardians can address financial obligations." Rising from his chair, he signaled that the discussion was over. "Charles is welcome to attend until the end of the week. After that, we'll begin the transfer process." Outside, the cold November air cut through Rebecca's expensive coat as she and Anthony made their way to his polished BMW. "This is completely unacceptable," Rebecca fumed. "Marcus has no right to destroy everything we've worked for. Anthony let out a sharp, dry laugh. "Let's not rewrite history. From where I sit, Marcus built everything. You just enjoyed the ride." As he tugged at his flawlessly tied silk tie, Rebecca turned on him. "You said you'd help with the tuition. What about that bonus you got from the Q4 deal?" Anthony hesitated, an uneasy look crossing his face. "Yeah, about that. There've been issues. Some irregularities with my accounts at the dealership. And now my ex's lawyer is digging through my finances for more child support, so..." "So what?" Rebecca's voice rose, panic creeping in. So you're abandoning the woman who risked everything for you? And the boy you promised to mentor? Be realistic, Rebecca. I never promised. You told me you loved me. Her voice cracked with emotion. You said Charles deserved better than a father stuck in a blue-collar life with no vision. Anthony's expression turned cold, his polished demeanor hardening. I said what I needed to say to make it work. That's how sales works, darling. And you should understand, you've been underselling Marcus for years. The sound of Rebecca's palm striking Anthony's face echoed through the car. A fiery red mark spread across his cheek as she hissed, You're a disgusting excuse for a man. Anthony rubbed his cheek, a frosty smirk tugging at his lips. Let's face it, Rebecca. You chased the dream. Luxury cars, exclusive parties, VIP treatment. Marcus was the one building something real. Looks like he made the better bet. A sudden buzz from Rebecca's phone shattered the tense silence. It was a message from Charles. Mom, Kevin's parents know everything. His dad pulled out of Marcus's contract. Everyone's talking. The fallout hit like an avalanche. By the end of the day, Charles's social circle had disintegrated. Parents who once hired Marcus for high-end construction projects abruptly canceled contracts. The country club Rebecca had proudly frequented stopped returning her calls. Even at the dealership, whispers trailed behind her every step. Rebecca's once prized office, a testament to her meteoric corporate rise, had become a glass-walled cage. The transparent walls, which once signified her dominance, now served only to display her vulnerability, exposing her fall to everyone around her. The carefully curated facade she had maintained for years seemed to crumble with every second. Mrs. Wilson? Her assistant's hesitant voice broke through her thoughts from the doorway. There was a nervous edge to the words. The general manager would like to speak with you. The meeting was brief and devoid of warmth. The general manager outlined concerns about her behavior, allegations of misusing dealership vehicles, and subtle references to the company's ethical standards. The conclusion came swiftly and without room for negotiation. We'll need your resignation by the close of business today, he said coldly. A pause followed before he added, Oh, and Mrs. Wilson, Mr. Rodriguez has accepted a transfer to our Phoenix branch, effective immediately. That evening, Rebecca sat alone in the pristine kitchen of the home her husband Marcus had so diligently provided for them. The life they shared, one painstakingly constructed through his hard work and sacrifice, now felt hollow, a monument to her reckless choices. The allure of an affair with a charming car salesman had proved fleeting, and the price she paid was devastating. Her phone buzzed, a notification from her banking app. She stared at the screen. Her balance sat at a dismal $742.16. Her mind wandered back to 2008, a time of struggle, etched deeply into her memory. When the financial crisis struck, Marcus had swallowed his pride, taking on any job he could find, even menial work far beneath his qualifications. Late nights and grueling weekends became his norm, all to keep their family afloat. She had been blind to his sacrifices then, irritated by the dust from his drywall work and his constant absence. Only now did she see that he had been laying the groundwork for the life she had so recklessly jeopardized. The sharp chime of the doorbell startled her. Standing on the front porch was Charles, their son, still dressed in his rumpled private school uniform. His tear-streaked face and bloodshot eyes betrayed his emotional turmoil. "Mom?" His voice was shaky, vulnerable. "The kids at school, they're saying things. About you, about Anthony." Rebecca's heart sank. Her son's fragile composure underscored the weight of her actions. "Dad's clients are talking to their kids," Charles continued, his voice cracking. "They're telling them to stay away from me." His gaze held hers, his boyish innocence replaced by raw hurt. "What's going to happen to us?" For the first time, the full weight of her choices hit her. She had exchanged Marcus's steadfast love and integrity for the empty glitz of indulgence. The values Marcus had worked so hard to instill were now marred, and their son was caught in the fallout. The garage's surveillance camera light blinked rhythmically, a silent witness to Marcus's methodical efforts to protect their family, even in his absence. "Start packing," she murmured, her voice barely above a whisper. "We'll find a way through this." Charles's frustration boiled over. "Figure what out? What about college? My friends? Everything's gone." His outburst was punctuated by the distant hum of an engine. For a fleeting moment, Rebecca's heart leapt. Maybe it was Marcus returning, but it was only a delivery truck. Her gaze fell to a new, untouched toolbox in the garage, a stark reminder of the difference between men who build and those who merely sell. In the days that followed, their world unraveled entirely. Rebecca stood in the empty foyer of their once lavish home, watching as a consignment dealer loaded her prized designer handbags into a van. Chanel, Gucci, Louis Vuitton, all remnants of a past life, sold for a fraction of their value. "This is the best offer I can give," the dealer said, handing her a check. "Luxury resale is oversaturated these days." Rebecca folded the check, its amount barely enough to cover a single mortgage payment. Upstairs, Charles came down wearing plain clothes, his private school uniform now replaced by attire for Franklin Public High School, where he would start the next day. The change was stark, a world away from the privileged existence he once knew. "Kevin's dad called," he muttered, his voice heavy with resignation. "He's pulling out of the Thompson project. Said Dad's the most honest contractor around," then hung up. Rebecca gripped the check tightly, her heart sinking further. The symbols of their former life, Lakers games, flashy drives in a BMW, now seemed like echoes of a distant dream. "We'll figure something out," she said weakly. Charles's bitterness spilled out. "Like what? Anthony's gone. Dad's gone. Stanford rescinded my acceptance because I won't graduate from Westbrook." His anger boiled over and he kicked the baseboard, one Marcus had installed years before. "All of this because you couldn't keep your hands off that guy." "I wasn't with my boss," Rebecca snapped. But her anger quickly dissolved into shame. She exhaled shakily, trying to steady herself. "I've hired a private investigator." Her son's expression was a mix of disbelief and defeat. The damage was done, and they both knew it. Their lives, once secure and full of promise, lay in ruins around them. "Your father didn't simply disappear without a trace. He left us." Charles's voice brimmed with exasperation as he corrected her, pulling out his phone and holding it up for Rebecca to see. "Kevin sent me this," he explained. On the screen was a contractor's website. One of its photos showcased a community center under construction 2 hours away, and there, barely visible but unmistakable, was Marcus's distinctive bright red pickup truck. Charles's resolve hardened. "I'm going to find him," he announced, already shrugging on his jacket. "You're coming with me." The drive stretched on endlessly. Rebecca could only afford it thanks to an emergency credit card still under her maiden name, its modest limit just enough to cover the gas. They passed numerous houses Marcus had built along the way, each a quiet monument to his exceptional skill. Eventually, the small town loomed into view, with the half-finished community center rising starkly against the grim November sky. Steel beams and concrete framed the structure, and workers in hard hats moved purposefully beneath the gray clouds. Then they spotted him. Marcus stood by a cement mixer, directing his crew with a firm, efficient demeanor. He looked different, leaner, tougher, as though life's challenges had chiseled away any softness. Rebecca's heart sank when she noticed his wedding ring was missing. His hands moved with practiced precision as he gestured, deep in explanation about the foundation's stability. Before Rebecca could react, Charles flung the car door open and rushed toward him. "Dad!" he called, his voice raw. Marcus glanced up, his expression inscrutable. His hands, however, continued spreading the cement with steady, practiced strokes. Undeterred, Charles approached the barrier separating them. "Dad, please." The steady rumble of the cement mixer filled the silence as Marcus remained focused on his work. Charles gripped the barrier tightly. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have said those things. I didn't mean them." Nearby workers exchanged uneasy glances, but wisely kept their focus elsewhere. Marcus's movements didn't waver, each stroke deliberate and exact. "I understand now," Charles continued, his voice faltering. "Everything you did for us. The long hours, the recession gigs, the Stanford savings. I didn't see it before. Anthony's gone. He transferred to Phoenix when things got tough, just like you said he would. Builders and sellers, right?" Marcus's hand stilled momentarily, the trowel suspended midair. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with fatigue but unwavering. "Funny how you didn't mean it, but you still let him play father while I broke my back trying to give you a future." At last, Marcus turned to face them, his clothes streaked with cement dust, his words cut like a blade. "You want to fix this? How? Like you fixed our marriage with the guy from the dealership? Like you fixed Charles's sense of entitlement with fancy cars and courtside seats?" Rebecca flinched, her voice shaky. "We can change. We'll do better. Just give us a chance." "A chance?" Marcus's laugh was bitter, devoid of humor. "I gave you 20 years of chances, 20 years of building something real while you chased after something borrowed." He gestured at the towering community center. This will last. Every beam, every nail, every inch of concrete, it'll stand long after your least luxury cars are junked." Charles stepped closer, desperation etched on his face. "I'll quit school. I'll get a job. I'll work from the ground up. Just show me how." Marcus studied him for a long moment, his voice softening slightly, though it remained edged with skepticism. "The ground up, huh? Funny you mention that. Got a call from Stanford's engineering department recently." Charles blinked, caught off guard by the shift in conversation. "They're looking for students with real-world experience. Told them I might know a kid interested in learning construction. Their replies sitting in your old room, under the new toolbox." For an instant, hope lit Charles's features, but just as quickly, it dimmed as Marcus turned back to his work, resuming his task with the same unwavering focus, leaving no room for further words. There was no retreat now. The path behind was closed. Could Marcus truly turn back? No. His grip tightened on the trowel. Moving forward? Maybe. Everything depended on what came next, on what he could build from this point onward. His focus shifted back to the task before him. Choose wisely, my boy. Borrowed things always return to their owners. Built things endure, Rebecca observed as her son's shoulders slumped beneath the weight of Marcus's words. The hum of the cement mixer drowned out any reply. Around them, the community center took shape, each beam and plank a tangible representation of the divide between a life borrowed and one that was truly built. The drive home stretched endlessly compared to the trip there. Charles stared at his hands, soft, unmarked, untouched by real labor. The gleam of Rebecca's designer watch caught his eye in the waning sunlight, its sheen a stark contrast to the reality they now faced. Marcus's words echoed in the silence. Sometimes things have to be rebuilt entirely from the ground up. The question was, once the rebuilding was done, would they recognize who they had become? The for sale sign swung creakily in the frigid breeze as Rebecca stood watching movers pack away the remnants of her life with Marcus. The real estate agent had warned her about the sluggish market, but even so, she wasn't prepared for how little the sale would yield. "Mrs. Wilson?" The foreman approached, clipboard in hand. "We've hit a snag with the payment." Rebecca closed her eyes, swallowing her frustration. The paycheck from her finance manager job, once a badge of honor, barely stretched far enough to cover necessities. The modest two-bedroom apartment she'd secured in a struggling neighborhood awaited them. Its dingy beige walls and worn carpeting offered little comfort, a stark reminder of the home Marcus had crafted with his own hands. "Mom?" Charles called from the doorway of his childhood room. Now stripped bare, It contained only Marcus's immaculate, unused toolbox. Mr. Harris called. The garage needs an answer about the job. The local repair shop had offered Charles an entry-level position, minimum wage for oil changes and tire rotations, a job he would have scoffed at months ago. But now, with college plans abandoned and their savings gone, it felt like a lifeline. "Take it," Rebecca said, her voice flat. "We need the money." Charles nodded, already dialing. His once designer wardrobe was replaced with practical clothes, and faint calluses began to form on his hands. Watching the transformation was quietly devastating. That night, in their cramped apartment, Rebecca sorted through boxes as Charles assembled second-hand furniture. The paper-thin walls allowed the sound of neighbors quarreling over overdue bills to filter through, a grim reminder of their own struggles. "Anthony called," Charles said suddenly, tightening a bolt on the wobbly table. Rebecca froze, her hands still buried in a box of utensils. "He offered us money," Charles continued, his voice tinged with bitterness. "Said he felt guilty. Then he mentioned his ex-wife's lawyer found out about us. He wants you to testify nothing happened until after their separation." Rebecca sagged against the counter, her tone weary. "That snake," she muttered. "After everything he promised." "Like what, Mom?" Charles's voice turned sharp, cutting through her despair. That he'd replace Dad? That his leased car and game tickets actually meant something? Charles looked down at his hands. "Dad tried to tell me there's a difference between earning something and borrowing it. Guess I had to learn that the hard way." Rebecca's phone lit up with a notification, her paycheck for recent overtime at the bank. The role she had once cherished now felt meaningless. Her thoughts drifted to Marcus, and how, during the 2008 recession, he had taken any job he could find to keep the family afloat. She had resented his late hours, the grimy clothes, the toll it had taken on him, but now she understood the quiet strength in his choices. "Your father," she began. "Don't," Charles interjected softly. Charles sprang to his feet, his voice cutting through the tension. "Don't bring up Dad. You threw away everything he worked for to chase after someone who rents fancy cars and runs the moment things get tough." Grabbing his keys, a practical Honda Civic he'd purchased with his own savings, unlike the flashy leased BMW he despised, he added, "I've got training at the garage." The door slammed behind him as he left. Rebecca wandered aimlessly through their cramped apartment. The furniture, though serviceable, lacked charm, a glaring reminder of how far they'd fallen from the days when their home was filled with Marcus's masterful woodworking. Now, the only view from the window was a dreary parking lot, a stark departure from the lush, manicured lawn that used to greet her. Even the air seemed heavy, stripped of the warm, earthy scent of sawdust that once signified their life of integrity and craftsmanship. Her phone buzzed, another reminder of overdue bills. The designer dresses she once flaunted at fundraisers had long been sold off, piece by piece. Her old social circle, built on Marcus's hard-won success, had evaporated along with their wealth. Even her job at the dealership felt unstable. Anthony's sudden departure had left whispers of layoffs swirling around the office. In the kitchen, her eyes fell on Charles's pay stub from the garage. The paycheck was paltry compared to the generous allowances they'd once handed him, but next to it lay scribbled notes, a carefully planned budget. Marcus had spent years trying to teach Charles such skills, and the bitter irony wasn't lost on Rebecca. She had encouraged their son to idolize Anthony's glamorous but hollow lifestyle, dismissing Marcus's values as outdated. Now, Charles was learning those same principles on his own, one oil change at a time. A text from the real estate agent interrupted her thoughts. "Final papers ready. Buyer offering 15% below asking. Market still declining. Recommend accepting," the message read. With a heavy heart, Rebecca agreed and opened her banking app. After paying off the mortgage, the remaining money would barely cover 3 months' rent. Her paycheck might stretch to cover essentials, but the life Marcus had painstakingly built, the life she had once taken for granted, was gone forever. Through the thin walls of the apartment, she overheard a neighbor calming a child upset about changing schools. Her gaze landed on the toolbox Marcus had gifted Charles, sitting untouched in his room. It was a quiet reminder of the difference between building something lasting and chasing fleeting comforts. Tomorrow, Charles would return to the garage to keep learning the value of hard work, while Rebecca would go back to selling luxury goods she could no longer afford to admire. And far away, Marcus would still be creating, his hands busy shaping something real as she continued living with the aftermath of dismantling his legacy. A gust of frigid winter air rattled the drafty windows. Rebecca recalled how Marcus had once replaced their old home's windows himself, painstakingly sealing every gap to keep the cold out. At the time, she had dismissed it as boring, but now she understood the lesson he had tried to teach, the enduring value of substance over appearances. 6 months of physical labor had transformed Charles in ways private schools never could. His hands, once soft and uncalloused, now bore the rough marks of hard work. As the first light of dawn broke, he arrived at a construction site in his modest Honda, carrying a new toolbox he'd bought with overtime earnings. From a distance, he watched the workers greet Marcus with respect born of admiration, a stark contrast to the shallow praise Anthony had once commanded at the dealership. "Site's off limits to visitors," a foreman called out. Marcus turned to see Charles standing there. His expression was unreadable, but there was a quiet recognition in his eyes. The months had changed them both. Marcus stood taller now, unburdened by pretense. "I'm not here to visit," Charles replied confidently, holding up the toolbox. "I'm here to work." Marcus's tone was neutral but firm. "Got your certifications? OSHA compliant?" Without hesitation, Charles produced neatly folded papers from his pocket. "Level 1 construction safety certified. Took the course after my shifts at the garage." He hesitated, then added, "Mr. Harris, my boss, wrote me a reference too." Marcus took the documents and began reviewing them, his expression carefully measured as the nearby crew pretended not to watch. The report praised your sharp diagnostic abilities, meticulous attention to detail, and unwavering work ethic. Marcus studied Charles with an appraising gaze. Marcus wasn't one to hand out compliments easily. "I started picking up those skills with simple oil changes." Charles shifted his footing slightly. "Even started reading engineering textbooks on my own. The community college offers night classes in construction management, so I enrolled." A hint of amusement flickered across Marcus's face. "Community college, huh? Thought that was beneath you. Wasn't Stanford the ultimate goal?" "Stanford was Mom's goal," Charles replied, his voice steady and resolute. "And Anthony's." The name dropped like a weight, tightening the air between them. Charles's tone hardened. "I've got my own ambitions now. I'm done chasing someone else's dreams. I want to create something that's mine, something I can stand behind." Marcus's eyes narrowed as he regarded his son. The defiant teenager who once scoffed at his father's trade was gone. In his place stood a young man beginning to respect the value of earned experience. Nearby, the construction crew stopped pretending not to listen. Their knowing expressions revealed shared memories of similar hard-fought lessons. "Let me see your hands," Marcus said at last. Charles extended them, palms up. They were calloused, stained with oil, and bore fresh marks from his latest repairs. These were hands that had labored, hands that had learned, so different from the smooth, manicured ones that once gripped Anthony's leased BMW. "Mom sold the house," Charles murmured, his voice tinged with regret. "The one you built. Developers are tearing it down to make way for cheap condos." "Foundations matter," Marcus replied. "Whether it's a house or a life, you can't throw on luxury finishes if the base isn't solid." Charles nodded thoughtfully and placed his toolbox beside a stack of lumber. "I get that now. Working in the garage taught me patience. It taught me that skill takes time, that you can't rush it or fake it. Every engine I've fixed, every problem I've solved. It's like you always said, everything starts with the foundation. Marcus held a set of blueprints in his hands, mulling something over. We need a materials runner on this site. It's an entry-level position, hauling supplies, managing inventory, pays $7 an hour, less than what you're earning at the garage. He paused, letting the words sink in. But you'll learn how every piece fits together to build something that lasts. When can I start? Marcus handed him a hard hat. Right now. Safety first. Same rule as when we built that treehouse. The mention of the treehouse struck Charles with a wave of nostalgia. He could almost feel the heat of those summer days when Marcus explained structural joints and the necessity of level foundations, lessons Charles had once dismissed in favor of Anthony's easy promises. Speaking of that treehouse, Charles said, pulling a worn photograph from his toolbox. I found this while going through Mom's things. Marcus took the picture. It was an old snapshot of them mid-construction. A younger Marcus stood beside a beaming Charles, who proudly clutched his first hammer. Behind them was the half-built treehouse, a testament to their shared effort and hope. You wore those work boots I got you for weeks. Marcus chuckled softly. Your mother said you even wore them to bed. I've got new boots now, Charles replied, gesturing to his steel-toed pair. Bought them myself. For a moment, neither spoke, the photograph serving as a silent bridge over the 6 months they'd spent apart. Around them, the construction site hummed with activity, concrete being poured, wooden frames taking shape. Every worker contributed to something bigger than themselves. There's one condition, Marcus said finally. What's that? You keep your garage job on the weekends. Finish what you started. No quitting just because things get tough. That's a lesson your mom and Anthony never learned. Their choices, their consequences. With deliberate care, Marcus tucked the photograph into his shirt pocket. We take a different approach. As the sun rose higher into the sky, Charles joined the crew, taking in the seamless rhythm of their teamwork. He observed how each member's efforts fit into the larger picture of a shared objective. During breaks, he noted how Marcus interacted with the team, not as someone who assumed authority, but as a leader who had earned respect. By day's end, Charles's brand-new toolbox bore its first marks of wear, and his freshly issued safety certification carried the smudges of its inaugural day on site. More significantly, Charles's understanding of bridge building had evolved, beyond the steel and concrete to the meaning behind the work. As the crew packed up, Marcus approached him. Those community college classes you mentioned, they're not cheap, are they? He asked. Charles shifted the weight of his toolbox onto his shoulder. I've been saving, he replied. It might take some time, but I'll make it happen. No shortcuts this time, Marcus said, his tone firm but encouraging. He walked to his truck, retrieved a thick envelope, and handed it to Charles. Your college fund, he said simply. I never spent it. I was waiting to see if you'd do something worth investing in. Charles took the envelope, realizing it represented more than money. It was a symbol of trust built over a lifetime. I won't waste it, he said with quiet conviction. I know, Marcus replied, his confidence unwavering, because now you're building something of your own. As Charles drove back to his mother's modest apartment, his new hard hat resting on the passenger seat, he felt a deeper understanding. Some bridges couldn't be bought or borrowed. They were constructed piece by piece through honest effort. A year later, the northern town had transformed, and Marcus had solidified his reputation as a master builder. His construction company was known for its craftsmanship, and though he could afford much more, he still lived in a modest, partially renovated house. Marcus always put client projects ahead of his own. On a quiet Sunday morning, while reviewing bids at his well-worn kitchen table, he heard the crunch of tires on his gravel driveway. He glanced out the window to see a familiar Honda Civic pulling in. Charles stepped out, wearing work clothes despite the weekend, carrying an envelope and a set of blueprints. Figured you'd be at the garage, Marcus said as Charles walked through the open door. I was promoted to lead mechanic last month, Charles said, his voice steady with pride. I trained my replacement yesterday. Now I've got something to show you. He handed Marcus the envelope, which held an acceptance letter to the local university's engineering program. It wasn't a prestigious name, but it valued practical experience. Full scholarship, Charles said as he unfurled the blueprints. Between the garage, my time with your crew, and community college, they saw enough to give me a shot. Marcus studied the blueprints, Charles's first independent project for his construction management course. The meticulous details showed a deep understanding earned through hands-on work. Your mom seen these? Marcus asked, impressed by the precision. She's changed, Charles said, sitting down with quiet confidence. She's paying her own way now. She even teaches finance classes at the Adult Education Center. She says she finally understands what you meant about building instead of borrowing. And Anthony? Marcus asked, recalling an old chapter of their lives. Last I heard, he's selling used cars in Phoenix. His ex-wife's lawyer found proof of more affairs and he lost his finance license. Charles traced a calculation on the blueprint. Funny how hollow all his promises turned out to be. Marcus nodded, thinking of his own past and Rebecca's designer lifestyle. The costliest lessons, he said, are the ones we think we don't need to learn. Charles reached into his bag and pulled out a weathered photo album. Found this in Mom's storage, he said, flipping it open. Remember this? The picture showed a young Charles and Marcus standing proudly next to their finished treehouse, their first project together. Charles's hands were wrapped in bandages from splinters and mistakes, but his smile spoke of accomplishment. You insisted on sanding every board yourself, Marcus said, smiling at the memory. Refused my help, even after getting splinters. Told me you wanted to earn your calluses. Charles chuckled, his voice carrying the depth of lessons learned. Marcus often found himself mulling over an old lesson he had once let slip from memory. Today, as he observed his son, the transformation was undeniable. No longer was Charles the privileged teenager enamored with borrowed luxuries. Instead, he had grown into a resilient young man, reshaping his life through determination and hard work. The evidence of his transformation was everywhere, in the roughness of his hands, the wear on his work boots, and most importantly, the steadfast purpose in his demeanor. I've got a new project starting soon, Marcus began, retrieving a set of blueprints from his bag. It's the community center expansion. Charles leaned over the plans, his eyes lighting up with recognition. These numbers, this layout, it's familiar, he said, a spark of excitement in his voice. Wait a minute. This is based on my design from that engineering course. Marcus nodded with a proud smile. The town council approved your modifications. Marcus hesitated for a moment before adding, if you want to see your first real project come to life, I'd be glad to have you on board. I've saved up some vacation time from the garage just waiting for the right project to use it on. Before they could delve deeper into the details, Marcus's phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen briefly, then handed it to Charles. The message was from Rebecca. Look what I found while going through winter storage, the text read. Attached was a photo of Marcus's old toolbox, the one he'd used when teaching Charles the basics of craftsmanship. This belongs with both of you now. I finally understand what it truly represents. Charles enlarged the image, studying the weathered leather and steel. It was a memento of his earliest lessons in hard work and integrity, taught by his father. She's not the same woman who once chose Anthony's borrowed glamour over the foundation I built, Marcus said quietly. People can change. The real question is whether they're building something better out of the broken pieces. As sunlight streamed through the windows that Marcus had installed himself, it illuminated the blueprints sprawled across the table. Outside, his truck stood ready, loaded with supplies for another day's work. He picked up his hammer, the weight of it familiar in his hand. Some things, he said, you have to build yourself. Charles looked at his father and nodded, understanding the depth of his words. "And some things," he replied, "are worth rebuilding." Together, they bent over the plans, recalculating measurements and double-checking every detail. The morning passed in a rhythm of shared focus and skill, each contributing to the other's vision. There were no shortcuts, no false prestige, just the satisfaction of creating something tangible and meaningful. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the yard, Charles rolled up his blueprints. "Mom asked about you," he said, hesitating slightly. "Not for herself. She just wanted to know if you found what you were always trying to build." Marcus glanced around his modest but evolving home, where every corner told a story of reconstruction and persistence. "I never lost sight of it," he answered. "I just had to clear out the unstable parts first." Charles smiled faintly, then started his car. Through the windshield, he watched his father return to the porch, a man no longer defined by silent sacrifices for unearned comforts, but as a builder, teaching that life's truest values are forged through honest work. The sunset painted the sky in warm tones as they parted, each returning to the lives they were building. Their shared future, like the community center they envisioned, would rise beam by beam, grounded in trust and effort. Some gaps couldn't be bridged with borrowed grandeur or superficial ambition, but with the right tools and dedication, even the most fractured foundations could be rebuilt stronger than ever. 5 years later. The crisp autumn light fell across the newly expanded headquarters of Wilson Construction. Where a humble office once stood, a 3-story symbol of perseverance and success now towered. From his straightforward yet efficient office, Marcus gazed out at the lively construction yard below. His walls weren't decorated with certificates or awards, but with framed blueprints, markers of his life's reconstructed milestones. In the visitor parking lot, a sleek Tesla pulled in, catching Marcus's attention. Rebecca stepped out, her once polished designer wardrobe replaced with practical business attire. Her manicured nails now bore a functional appearance, reflecting years of navigating life's challenges. Faint lines around her eyes hinted at struggles that no makeup could hide. But Rebecca wasn't here for Marcus. The bridges had long since crumbled beyond repair. Rather than lamenting what couldn't be undone, Rebecca found herself attending her son Charles's project presentation. Now the head of engineering at Wilson Construction, Charles had earned his position through expertise and integrity, not by leveraging connections. The conference room buzzed with investors and town council members. Rebecca slipped into a seat at the back, her gaze fixed on Charles as he confidently led the discussion. Charles unveiled plans for the company's newest initiative, affordable housing crafted from innovative, sustainable materials. His presentation relied on substance over spectacle, practical solutions grounded in sound principles. As he detailed the Wilson Construction ethos, emphasizing durability over fleeting profits, his eyes briefly met Rebecca's. "We've seen the price of valuing image over essence," he remarked. In the front row, his wife Luna beamed with pride. She had been a steadfast partner in his journey of rebuilding his life. Their story began years ago, in the modest auto repair shop where Charles had started over. Luna had been a customer with a stubborn transmission issue, and their bond grew steadily, much like one of Marcus's construction projects, deliberate, sincere, and built to last. When the presentation ended, Rebecca lingered. She watched Marcus, Charles's mentor, embrace him with warmth and pride. Their relationship had endured its share of challenges, emerging stronger with time. Rebecca's own connection with Charles was still fragile. Weekly dinners at her modest apartment often tiptoed around painful memories, particularly Anthony's name. The past 5 years had been a harsh teacher for Rebecca, highlighting the weight of consequences. Her career as a finance manager ended when Anthony's reckless mismanagement led to the dealership's downfall, unraveling the financial chaos he had concealed for years. Now, Rebecca taught basic financial literacy at an adult education center. The job wasn't lucrative, but it gave her something money couldn't: purpose. Occasionally, she overheard updates about Anthony from local business circles, each story confirming Marcus's early judgment. Those who built things had a different kind of resilience compared to those who sold illusions. Anthony, once the charismatic BMW sales manager, had been reduced to managing a struggling used car lot in Phoenix. Stripped of his securities license after years of fraud were uncovered, he faced mounting debts and a second divorce that left him with nothing. His carefully curated image had disintegrated, leaving behind only ruins. "Mom?" Charles's voice interrupted her thoughts. Turning, she saw him standing beside Luna, their faces hinting at an announcement. Luna's hand rested on her stomach, a gesture that told Rebecca everything. "We're expecting in March," Luna said warmly. "We'd like you to be part of it," she added hesitantly. "But there are conditions," Charles interjected, his tone firm but kind, shaped by hard-won lessons. "No designer nurseries, no applications to elite preschools." Rebecca nodded, absorbing the boundaries they set. "I'd like that," she said quietly, "to help lay a strong foundation this time." Across the room, Marcus was engrossed in conversation with his project managers, discussing technical details. His company had grown steadily, not through flashy deals or risky gambles, but through consistent quality and earned trust. The house he had renovated years ago had transformed into a true home, every improvement infused with care and authenticity. Marcus had never remarried. Some structures, he knew, couldn't be rebuilt, no matter the effort. As the meeting ended and the room emptied, Rebecca stood alone, gazing out the window. She watched Marcus and Charles walk side by side toward the construction yard, their work boots kicking up small clouds of dust as they discussed the day's tasks. A framed photo on the wall caught her eye. A younger Marcus and Charles proudly standing beside the treehouse they had built together years ago. Beside it hung a more recent picture, Charles and Luna on their wedding day, held not in a grand venue, but in the community center Marcus had been building when Charles first began to turn his life around. That same center now housed Rebecca's financial literacy classes, where she taught others to recognize the cost of chasing illusions over reality. Her phone buzzed with a news alert about Anthony, another fraud investigation, more charges. The pattern remained the same, though the scale of his schemes had diminished. Rebecca dismissed the notification, her focus returning to what truly mattered, the solid foundations being built around her, both in construction and in life. The man who once sold dreams of grandeur now found himself struggling even to maintain a facade of success. Meanwhile, across the city, Rebecca stepped into her modest apartment, a cramped but honest space that swallowed a significant portion of her teacher's paycheck. Though located in a neighborhood most would overlook, it mirrored her life, unembellished, but genuine, built on the lessons of hard-earned survival. The scars of her earlier choices had redirected her course, and she resolved to pass on a deeper understanding of life to the next generation. Her grandchild, she vowed, would learn what she had discovered too late: the value of authenticity over pretense. Among the truths she had come to embrace were the lessons that true foundations require time to build, that some debts demand more than money to repay, and that real stability grows only through perseverance. As she walked to her dependable second-hand car, purchased under a careful budget, her path took her by Wilson Construction's headquarters. Through the lobby's glass, she glimpsed a wall adorned with photographs of completed projects, each one a testament to Marcus's thoughtful and measured craftsmanship. The final image showed the groundbreaking of their latest endeavor. In that photograph stood 3 generations: Marcus, the embodiment of quiet resilience; Charles, bearing the marks of hard-won wisdom; and Luna, carrying the promise of the future in her arms. Rebecca wasn't in the picture, and she didn't need to be. Her absence, she realized, was simply a natural consequence of the decisions she had made. That evening, as she graded stacks of papers from her financial literacy students, Her apartment seemed smaller than ever. Each assignment on her desk represented someone striving to build the kind of stability she had only recently begun to understand. Amidst the clutter was a small, tarnished reminder of her past, a broken clasp from a designer bracelet Anthony had once given her. It wasn't a symbol of love, but rather a marker of hard-earned lessons. As Rebecca worked, the evening news featured a segment about Wilson Construction's affordable housing initiative. The report praised the company for prioritizing quality and durability over flashy but short-lived designs. Charles appeared briefly, confidently explaining the principles of thoughtful construction. Rebecca noticed his sturdy work boots, practical and unpretentious, just like Marcus's. In the background, she spotted Luna, visibly pregnant, touring the construction site. Luna's hand rested protectively on her belly, a quiet promise that the values of authenticity and hard work would live on in the next generation. Rebecca glanced at her phone, where an unanswered text from Anthony lingered, sent during one of his spirals months earlier. "Remember when we had it all?" She hadn't responded. The truth had hit her like a cold wind. They had never truly had anything. Their life together had been a mirage, built on borrowed wealth and fleeting appearances. As night settled over her tiny apartment, Rebecca prepared her lesson plan for the next day. Teaching a course titled Building Financial Foundations was an irony she no longer overlooked. She had paid dearly for the realization that wealth isn't measured in fleeting luxuries, but in building something that lasts. Across the city, Marcus and Charles were likely working late, charting the details of their next project with precision and care. At home, Luna was undoubtedly cherishing the company of men who created instead of consumed. Somewhere in Phoenix, Anthony was likely chasing another illusion, never stopping to learn the lesson Rebecca had paid such a steep price to grasp. She now understood. True foundations are not bought, they are built. Stability is not rented, it is earned. The choices people make are etched into the foundation of their lives, leaving a legacy for future generations, whether a legacy of wisdom or of regret. By dawn, each of them would confront the consequences of their own paths. Marcus would continue building, Charles would keep learning, Luna would nurture the future, Anthony would chase after shortcuts, and Rebecca would teach others to avoid the pitfalls she had once stumbled into. Each was standing, steadily or shakily, on the foundations they had chosen to construct or failed to construct for themselves. My friend, and this is the end of the story. If you liked this story, then put your royal like and subscribe to the channel. May the force be with you.